Welcome to another episode of the show where we interview the storytellers, the hustlers, and the outcasts of the world. Today I'm very excited because I get to interview a few fellow podcasters. We got Nolan Hong from Hanging Out with Nolan Hong. We got Gavin Sugai from Talk Story Podcast. Queen Tahi from Mompreneur BFF. And I feel like the reason why I was so excited to do this episode is because in the podcasting world, we don't get to talk to each other or see each other. I just found out that I'm the only one that listens to everyone's episodes and they don't listen to mine. So I'm kind of hurt, but I'm going to try to get through this interview. But I'm really excited because we have to share our ideas, our struggles, and everything. And yeah, guys, thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it.
So I'm Nolan, last name's Hong. And I always have an awkward time saying my own name. It sounds weird coming out of my mouth, so now I feel really uncomfortable because I said my own name. Which is odd because the name of my podcast has my name in it. So when I try to tell people what it is, it's really uncomfortable. But my podcast is real simple. It's a talk story podcast where I have a lot of different guests from all kinds of backgrounds, whether they're celebrities, musicians, educators. We've even had animal communicators, just interesting people around the island and even around the world have come on, and we just talk and find out their story. And it's as if you were a fly on the wall at a pauhana and just happened to hear a conversation between either two friends or two people meeting each other for the first time. A very natural, honest, open conversation.
What an introduction. Did you practice that on the way here?
No.
That was really good. That was really good.
All I could think of was like, man, it sounds like I'm just rambling. I better just stop talking.
Gavin?
Hi, I'm Gavin Sugai. A lot of people will get my name wrong because they think it's Gavin when it's actually there's an E in there. Even when it says Gavin Sugai as a Gaven, they'll still spell it with an I. Or if you go to Starbucks, they might put Gavan instead, which I don't know why they put that, but yeah, sure, it's on my my credit card, everything. But that's fine, it doesn't matter to me. My podcast is called Talk Story with Gavin Sugai, and basically you got a bunch of people from Hawaii or people that are doing great things here on the island and try to showcase them across the world because people don't really know what's going on in Hawaii, and I want to show that to people. So
Cool.
yeah,
Awesome. Queena, like your things on your mind. Why are you just looking at that piece of gum on the table?
I listen better when I don't look at people. That's probably why my podcast is audio.
Hey, Queena. So, Queena,
I'm gonna edit that part.
tell us a little bit about yourself. If you guys have seen Queena before in previous episodes, so she's like my sister from another mister. But they might not know you. Stop playing with that gum. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Queena. I have a new podcast on Mompreneur BFF. It used to be called 808 Business Moms, and we just showcase any guests that brings value to the mompreneur world.
Oh, it's plain and simple, huh? I always ask this to guests, okay? Because SHOW stands for Storytellers, Hustlers, Outcasts. Which one do you relate to the most? Nolan, storyteller, hustler, or outcast?
Well, if you had asked me this like 10 years ago, I would have said hustler, only because I really was into rap music and I just wanted to be a hustler. But I really don't know what, other than that, what that would mean to me.
Shout out to the 90s.
Because I'm also very lazy, so that doesn't relate. Storyteller could be accurate, but I like to have others help others tell their story. So I don't know if I'm necessarily the storyteller. So outcast, I also don't feel necessarily like an outcast because everybody's so nice and inviting and friendly. So I guess I'm a little bit of each in a unrelatable kind of way.
You're a little bit country, but you're a little bit rock and roll.
Yeah.
That's how I usually like to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gavin?
I would say I'm a little bit of everything, but more so I'll lean towards storyteller because I love to tell stories. But I don't like to lie, but I like to tell stories. And I love to share people's stories and just understand and listen to other people's stories and just be able to connect with them.
Storyteller.
Storyteller, hustler. Sorry.
Storyteller, hustler, or outcast?
I think I'm a little bit of everything. Outcast?
Well, love your answers today. Moving on. Would you like to say anything?
I'm just really nervous right now. I don't know
Stop
why.
it. A lot of people get nervous when they sit next to me. You don't have to, okay? You've known me for a long time. Let's just get over this awkward tension. When I interview people, or even celebrities, I'm always interested to hear and see or hear about how they were as children, as kids. Because I think, whatever job you do, your past says a lot about you. Or maybe if you were into the entertainment industry and you were always performing in front of family, or you're a performer, you were singing, chances are later on in life you might end up in the entertainment industry. So Nolan, what kind of kid were you growing up?
So I was born and raised by a single mother, and I was an only child, and my mom worked for our family business as a Chinese restaurant, so she worked 7 days a week, 12, 13 hours a day kind of thing. So I pretty much grew up by myself, and as a latchkey kid and stuff. So I was very shy and quiet in that sense, as far as like around strangers. But when I was by myself, I was very loud, and I'd like to look at myself in the mirror and make weird noises and make faces and stuff like that.
I do that now. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife sometimes will catch me if I'm passenger. I'll have the visor on me. Like, what are you doing? I just want to see what this face looks like. I pretty much was raised by the television, so I watched TV all the time, and my mom kept saying TV is bad for you, you're gonna get cancer, but she was never around to make me stop. So I was like, I don't know what else to do. Click. So I grew up really idolizing watching performers and television, and always fantasizing one day I would love to be on TV, because I don't know, I valued it so much in the sense of I looked up to those people. So it's interesting that I've kind of been able to get into the entertainment industry and doing acting and stuff on the levels that I have in commercials and television and stage and theater and radio. So people who don't know me from when I was young are always like, oh, you must have been a real ham when you were a kid. And I was performing, I was like, nah, I was super shy. And I even would try to audition for stuff and then get scared. And so when I was in high school, I was like, oh, let me go take drama class. And I went to the first class, and I was so intimidated that I left midway through the class and I dropped out of the class. So I never actually took any formal acting classes till college, when I had finally been okay with okay, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it. So I gotta just shed all these fears and just go for it. I had very low self-esteem and low confidence too. So it was always man, it would be such a great fantasy to have this happen, but why would that ever happen to me? And so I would just imagine it, but not think it would be a reality. I was also a very rascal kid in the sense of anything my mom said don't do, I'd say okay, and then I'd do it. So I have all these scars and things because she's like, don't touch the stove, it's very hot, it'll burn your hand. Oh, why didn't you tell me? Yeah, so I'm surprised I'm still alive to this day, because I was left alone a lot, and also I was very, whatever I was told not to do, I had to figure out why.
Well, you're from the same era as me, 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised a lot of us are still around, to be honest, because we drank out of the hoses, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
kind of what we did, we did a lot of stuff that I'm not even sure why we're still here, but thank God you're still here. Yeah.
Drinking out of the hose probably gave us a lot of good bacteria.
Yeah,
So that's why now we're able to
I never
handle.
thought about that.
Guys are mutants now.
Drink out of the hose. That's today's lesson. Drink
No.
out of the. Oh no! Don't drink out of the hose. Sorry.
You might be
2019.
mutated.
Yeah. Never mind. Don't drink out of the hose. Grab one of these.
Well, now this is bad too, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
the
this is
plastic
bad.
That could be from the hose
Throw
too.
this
yeah.
away.
Just, I was gonna say drink from the rain, but even that's also bad.
Don't even eat the bananas. Don't do anything.
Yeah.
Welcome to 2019. Gavin, what kind of kid were you growing up?
Mine was really interesting. I actually grew up really quiet, and I actually had to take speech therapy because a lot of teachers thought I was like very quiet. I didn't know how to respond. They didn't really know if I had good vocabulary, which I did. I just didn't want to say anything, right? So yeah, my mom thought I was just really shy, and she didn't think I was gonna. She thought I was just kind of a kid that just wanted to explore different things, but just kind of stay in my little box. And actually, I really wanted to expand, and it changed when I turned like 7th grade. I actually wanted to expand out and become more friends with people. So I started to build my persona and try to like just kind of go with different groups. And then when I was in high school, then I really was like gun ho. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make as many friends as I can, and I'm gonna carry that through high school. And actually, after high school, I really figured out like I should be making more intentional relationships and be able to invest in people and not just make shallow relationships. And I feel like a lot of my childhood was based on shallow relationships.
Yeah.
And actually, during my high school years, I actually taught teaching at church, and I was very gung-ho with teaching like, you know, smaller kids, and it actually helped me to build my confidence and build just being able to invest in people's lives and understand, you know, kids, like how they grow up and their struggles as well, and with identity and knowing where they fit in with all, you know, in the world. So it was interesting experience. Now, you know, I look back at what I used to be, and I was like, wow, okay, there's a lot of different things that I've changed in my life, and now this is me now. This is cool. I'm really happy with that.
Look at him now, Mom. Yeah. Look at Gavin. What kind of child were you growing up?
I was really loud, and my parents were very strict. My father's Tongan, my mom's Samoan, and I wasn't allowed to leave the house or do anything, so I was just loud everywhere I went. And then once I left my home and I flew to Rhode Island for college back in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s, she said. In case you guys didn't hear that, early 2000s.
I got pregnant like 4 months after living there. So that's the kind of kid I was. I was a kid just wanting to explode, and I exploded.
Exploded with a kid.
It just flew right out. And that's the kind of child I was.
All right, next question. Where did you guys start your whole podcast journey? And when did you decide, okay, you've dabbled in everything else, right? You did acting, you did voiceovers and everything, but when did you decide, okay, I think I'm going to try my hand at podcasting?
So it was born out of disappointment, kind of, because I was working as a weekend DJ for 94.7 Kumu, and then they were looking for a new morning show co-host, which was at the time what I was trying to strive for. Like, I got into the radio industry to be a morning show co-host, and I had been, a guest co-host whenever someone was sick, and I really enjoyed it. So when they were doing this search for the next new co-host, I worked really hard and I did all kinds of online things. Like, I pretended like I was running for office and did sign waving on the streets and all that stuff, and I had a lot of fun with it, and I got a lot of strong support and following from a big group of people. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I didn't get it. So my wife was like, well, now that you've got all this momentum and you've got this following and people want to hear you, like, what are you gonna do with it? And I was like, oh man, yeah, it'd be such a shame if I didn't take advantage of that. And I still have this burning desire to entertain or communicate with an audience. And so I was like, well, the only thing I can think of is like doing a podcast, but I don't know what it would be about. And she's like, well, you gotta think about it. Like, and she's like, you're trying to think of all kinds of ideas of what to do. And I remember I ran into a friend of mine, Nikki, who owns a Hawaii Doggy Bakery, and I was telling her, I was at the Pet Expo, like, man, I have this idea that I want to do a podcast, but I don't know what. I mean, and she's all like, well, don't you have, like, you know so many people? I don't see why you can't just like have, talk to your friends and stuff. I was like, yeah, I don't know, it'd just be like a show about where I just talk to people and just talk story. I mean, that's the easiest thing. And she's like, yeah, it sounds great. I was like, what, really? She's like, I think you have your podcast idea. I was like, yeah, I guess so. And she's like, all right, go do it. And I was like, oh, shoot, what? Okay. And so
what?
So I am the type that tends to say, like, I come up with ideas and then I go, well, I gotta wait till the time's right.
Yeah.
And I never get it done. But then my wife is opposite, where she's like, oh, you said you're gonna do this? Okay, what do we gotta do? A, B, C, what's the next steps?
Yeah.
So thank goodness I found her and met her, because ever since I did, like, all these things started happening, like doing our video production company, starting our YouTube channel, all that stuff. So this one, when she was with me at this meeting, or this chance meeting, we were walking away, she's like, so when are we starting the podcast? I was like, oh, you want to start it like now? I don't know, like, well, we gotta figure out how to do it. Who do we have as guests? Like, I don't even, does it cost money? And she's like, okay, let's go to the office right now and figure it out. And I was like, now? And like within 2 days, we recorded our first 3 episodes and had it up and running. And it's all thanks to her because she learned how to, set it up and all that stuff. And I was able to get my, guests on board and make my list of who I wanted and the format of the show. And it's been nonstop every week for 2 years now. And every week I go, this is the week that we fail and don't get an episode up, and somehow we miraculously.
How did you come up with the name Hanging Out with Nolan Hong?
I went through, well, what is the show about and how would it describe it?
Yeah.
And I was like, literally all we're doing is just hanging out. And I wanted people to understand that there's no agenda. Like, it's just that we're getting an authentic, real conversation.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, yeah, it's just like I'm hanging out with my friends. I am hanging out with my friends. They're hanging out with me. The listeners are hanging out. And I wanted to put my name in there because I'm narcissistic. So hanging out with Nolan Hong.
The show with Damon. Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe. I've listened to your podcast before, and he knows a lot of really cool people. I think maybe out of the Hawaii podcast, he might be like the celebrity podcast out of all of us. Really cool people. And how many episodes so far have you done?
I think we're at 113 now.
Wow, that is so good.
Our goal was to make it to 50, so I could say that it's episode 50, and that was it. And now it's now we've gone past that. So I'm like, oh, cool. Never thought I'd make it that far.
We really got to catch up. We're going to catch up. We're on episode 10 right now. This is episode 10, by the way. But we're getting there. Oh, that's so awesome. Gavin, how did you start in podcasting? When did you get that idea that you wanted to do this?
So, I was a audiovisual technician for Windward Community College. I worked there for like 3 years, and I actually wanted to do YouTube videos because I knew a bunch of people, like my friend Sky, who's a filmmaker, shout out to you, and just a lot of cool people doing a lot of cool things, and I wanted to showcase them. But then I got injured, and I broke my leg in 3 different places, my tib fib, and it took me a whole year to recover, basically, because I had 9 months of physical therapy. I was on crutches for 7 months, and I can't really do a YouTube video if I'm just on crutches the whole time. So I started listening to podcasts, and I said, wow, as someone who did sound technician work, I know how to do the editing, I know what equipment to get, I know what's budget friendly so that I can show my friends you don't have to have a crazy budget to do a podcast. You could just do stuff with an iPhone and stuff with just, your headphones, and you can do a podcast through that. But just being able to show people like you can do a podcast with a budget friendly equipment, and started doing a podcast. I actually one day I told my wife, hey, let's just do an episode. We didn't have any agenda, we didn't think of anything, we just was like, let's just sit down in the living room and let's just record in our pajamas.
Just start talking.
I just started talking, right? And I thought of Talk Story as the name for it because I feel like a lot of media today, we've lost that kind of connection with people, with face-to-face. The Talk Story is more of a way to kind of bring communities together. Like, that's my motto, I build communities together, one conversation at a time. So it's Talking Story on my podcast, bringing this community to this community to this community. And that's how I build my podcast today. That's how I started, and that's my motto, and I keep going with the same motto.
How do you think, I've always wondered, being that you have the name, is Talk Story a local term, or does people actually use it on the mainland? I feel like it's kind of a local thing, yeah?
It is a local thing, and actually in Seattle, I just came from Seattle literally yesterday, and people are starting to pick that term up. Even in Oregon, they're picking up a lot of things from Hawaii, and they're integrating it with their society, which is pretty cool. I think it's interesting because then, they say like bruh, which is kind of same as bra, but it's bruh,
Yeah.
And then I could just say like shoots, and they kind of understand what I'm saying. It's kind of cool because then it's like, okay, it's not really foreign.
Like a universal language almost.
Yeah, pidgin's not too foreign on the West Coast. Maybe if you go to the East Coast, maybe you say shoots in New York, and they might think it's a gun or something,
Yeah. Sure.
Queen up.
Yeah, why are you always
episodes?
looking out into the distance?
I listen better when I don't look at people.
I think
kinda
up till I haven't really counted, but maybe 50.
It's a sociopathic tendency.
15 episodes altogether so far.
Yeah, I haven't counted really. I've lost track after 10 now. Honestly, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna shoot them out there, whatever.
Yeah,
You're in it now.
Yeah,
Getting back.
Yeah.
15 episodes. Whew. We got to catch up. Karina, how many episodes and when did you start the podcast? So you decided you went through different transformations, right? Different names and kind of evolved over time.
No, I just had Gateway Business Moms and now it's Mompreneur BFF. Are you not paying attention?
You had Mom You. See, I know you, Mom You. Remember Mom You?
Yeah, but that was something that you and I discussed. Like,
No, but it became Mom
oh
You.
my God, stop already.
It became Mom You.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
look it up,
anyways.
Mom
Now
You.
I'm gonna be the one not looking. Like mom and dad are fighting again.
Bringing back
So
childhood
what's the
memories.
question?
What about how did you start your podcast? When did you start this journey into podcasting?
When I started my podcast, I never listened to a
gonna be a
podcast. I didn't even
long
know what a
answer.
podcast was. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Podcasting, okay. And there was a selfish reason why I decided to start 808 Business Moms, because I wanted to be an 808 business mom. And so I was like, okay, let me start a podcast. And all this money's gonna be raining from the sky. Yeah, exactly. Never did. But what was amazing about like starting it, once you start it, okay, so it's the whole, what I realized with the podcast, the whole before you even start it is the hardest part, right? And then once you start it, it's like, oh, I can do this. And then you just keep going, and then it doesn't get as time consuming. You guys know, it's once you get it going, and then it just kind of takes on a life of its own, because as they said, like you don't really know what you're doing. And I just started reaching out to like random people, like, hey, you have a business or whatever, so let's talk. And then it kind of evolved, and then I started interviewing people outside of Hawaii, people who weren't moms, and then that's how I ended up recently changing it to pivoting to Mompreneur BFF, because I realized that you get more value from others too. And that's how podcasting started for me, because I'm a talker, and it's very common for moms to want to be blogging, but I am a talker, so it makes no sense for me to blog when I talk. Yeah, and that's how I started podcasting.
How many episodes?
Oh my God, that was such a good answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Finally.
Golf club. Because I'm wearing a golf shirt. Yeah.
Golf clap? Golf clap.
Hate my life. How many episodes have you done so far?
So episode, what just got released? 46%.
One.
Episode 40. Episode 000. 40. Episode 48 was the latest one released. 46. Yeah, 48.
Nice.
Cool.
Oh.
So yeah, it's exciting.
I got into podcasting for selfish reasons. I just wanted to talk story. No pun intended. But I just wanted to talk to people. I thought it was cool. With my job, you know, I work as a trainer, personal trainer, full-time business owner, and I teach classes too. So I'm always talking to people, and I got to spend a whole hour with them. So I've been with all kinds of people, you know, people that are quiet, people that talk too much, you know, different kinds of people. I thought it would be really cool to interview people and just talk story. I don't know. And I've been asked the question, but what is your goals? Are you looking to make money out of this? I'm like, not really. I just want to talk story. See how I'm just plugging Gavin's podcast over and over and over again. And get
You find us on iTunes.
You just want
On
to
iTunes. Yeah.
you just
Talk
want to
story.
hang out
I just want to hang out. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
and be your BFF.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether you're a mompreneur
Or not, you know. I mean,
Or
that's
you're
really
a
what I want
storyteller.
to do. Or a hustler.
Or all three, you know.
or not. Yeah.
I mean, let's
Hey,
be
yeah.
real.
You can make a fourth one if you want to.
We're hanging out talking story with some mompreneurs. When it comes to, obviously, we kind of all got into podcasting because we were probably listening to other podcasts, right?
No.
I mean, it's safe to say, right? So it's safe to say that we were all doing that. That's why we got the idea for podcasting and we kind of liked it. Nolan, what are some of your podcasts? Two-part question. What is some of your podcasts that you listen to, your favorite podcasts? And I've always been interested on you guys' opinion as far as having a podcast that swears and having a podcast that keeps it clean? Because I'm pretty clean with like we either edit out or we bleep out stuff or whatever. But what's your thoughts on that?
So for me, podcasts are difficult in that I kind of go in waves where if I get hooked into it, I'll be listening to podcasts all the time.
Yeah.
And then there's times when I get real busy and I'll just kind of lose track of it. And then it's like, oh man, I'm so far behind. I'll stop listening. But
Yeah.
my podcast list is very short and very embarrassing. It's pro wrestling podcasts.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Sports podcasts, and then I have this little section of like business kind of podcasts that I put there because I feel like I'm supposed to listen to those,
Oh.
but I rarely listen to them because it's like it's not as exciting as finding out who's wrestling
The
next week.
educational section, like you
Yeah.
want to feel like you're gaining something out of it.
Yeah, it's more so like if my wife sees like, oh, okay, you're at least listening to something that's going to be helpful for our business. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I listen to Jalen and Jacoby from ESPN, and then I listen to Sam Roberts' wrestling podcast, and then I also listen to Bobby Lee's podcast,
Yeah.
Tiger Belly, and Joe Rogan once in a while. But those are pretty much it.
Yeah. Now, what is your take on?
Oh, the swearing.
Yours is pretty clean.
Yeah,
for the most part. Yeah.
So if we do have swearing, we just bleep it out, and that's mainly because we do have one confirmed listener who is under the age of 12. So I said I got to make sure. That,
Shout out to that 12-year-old out there watching.
Thanks, Evan.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan.
But as far as for me listening to it, I don't mind swearing, other than if it becomes like, well, one, I can't listen to it with the kids in the car,
Kids
so that
around, yeah.
sucks. But two, when it's just all they do is swear, it seems like just for the sake of swearing. I like swearing when it's funny and it adds to
Purpose.
Yeah. Like I love like Dave Chappelle when he swears, it's funny to me. But when someone just says it because they can't think of the next word,
Yeah.
it's like
It's a
an
filler.
effing, just effing. It's like, oh no, it's so irritating. It's just like hearing somebody say like.
Like I was about to say.
Yeah. So that's what my take on it. I'm cool with it if that's what the purpose of it is.
Yeah. Gavin, favorite podcast, and what's your take on explicit or clean podcasts?
All right, so I started, of course, Joe Rogan's podcast. I think a lot of people watch that, but the one I really take after is Views by David Dobrik and Jason Nash. I love that podcast. They have a great dynamic because one's really young and one's really old.
Okay.
And they're just like best friends, and they're just talking the story with each other, and they don't have any guests. It's just them every single week, and it kind of reminded me of like my dad and I, how we hung out and stuff like that, or like my friends, like how we talk, and just different viewpoints, but also doing crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I like that dynamic. And then David Chang, he's a chef, but he started his own podcast. I love cooking, so that's why I kind of connected with him. And those are pretty much the ones I really listen to. And of course, Skip and Shannon Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I love that Undisputed podcast. Or I mean, I like the show. I watch a lot of their clips on YouTube, and it's so funny watching Shannon Sharp talk about his old days, and you see Skip. Their dynamic is so good, right?
Yeah.
So I take a lot of influence from their podcasts or their YouTube videos as well. And the topic for explicit, it's interesting. I try my best not to swear because I don't know. I could turn that on and off, right?
Yeah.
I have that kind of filler. But then there's guests that I feel like in order to get an authentic feeling from them, some of them they have to say maybe a one or two swear words.
Yeah.
And then, but I always cringe when I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do it, please don't do
Because
it.
I feel like once they get one in, it just becomes natural.
Yeah.
Now they're like F. My life in my F in life, right?
All right, and I cringe, but at the same time, like that's them, and I don't want to filter them like that. So I do put like an explicit, like okay, if I hear even one swear word, I just put an E right then and there,
Just to be safe.
just to be safe, because I don't know who's listening. I mean, unless a 12-year-old kid messaged me, that was a really good podcast. Wait, which one did you listen to? The one with the E or the one without the E? So yeah, that's my take on it. And I don't bleep out anything, just because I'm pretty lazy, so like the editing, I don't really want to just put a bleep in there, and then especially, maybe I'll put it if they like swear like continuously, like do like one sentence. Then I'm just gonna like beep, like 10 minutes. Yeah,
The whole episode, the whole podcast.
yeah, it just died right there. Right, I'll just hear this flat line.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. Yeah.
Okay. Queena, favorite podcast, and what do you think about swearing?
I have not listened. Everyone talks about Joe Rogan's podcast. I have not listened to it. I'll probably listen to it now.
Speaking of swearing,
Yeah, and but I usually only listen to business podcasts because I thought those are the only podcasts, but apparently not. And like Nolan, I go in waves to where I'm like listening to them, and I'm just like, but I don't usually only listen to them in the car. And sometimes, most of the time in the car, I don't even want any sounds, especially if I'm in the car without my kids.
Yeah.
I just want quiet. And then, as far as the swearing is concerned, a lot of my guests, because they're already coming in with, oh, this is the audience of moms, they already kind of, what's that word? Edit themselves? Filter themselves. But sometimes they'll see a swear word here and there, but like if it falls naturally into the conversation, I leave it. Because sometimes I'll swear like in my Instagram captions and stuff, but it's very few and far between. And then that's my take. But if they're just continuously swearing, or if there's a swear word that I just think is irrelevant to the conversation, I just cut it.
But like me.
I don't leave. I just cut.
Yeah.
it's funny. The probably the biggest reactions of like laughter from me and my wife in our podcast is when somebody effectively uses a great swear word.
Yeah.
So I actually I don't cringe. I actually like that's great.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to edit
respect
that. Some of my favorite episodes are with very dirty-mouthed guests.
Yeah, I think, and Queena knows me, like, she always teases me. I keep it very clean, and you'll never hear any swearing or anything, but it's weird because a lot of podcasts I listen to like Gary Vee, and Gary Vee swears in every sentence. That's why Queena's like, wait, you listen to Gary Vee, but you don't swear, And I'm very bipolar when it comes to that. I'll listen to a lot of swear stuff, but for me, when I got it, even if you follow my Instagram, my Facebook, everything's clean because I think it's too easy. I think I try to do the opposite of what everyone's doing. So being that everyone's swearing and F this, F that, I want to be that guy that can make it clean and make that cool,
That's your brand.
Yeah, it's my brand, and I kind of grew up like that too. Like growing up with my mom, my grandparents, and everything. Like, they would say like "damn it" and stuff like that, but they didn't swear a lot. So I always looked up to them, and I had great role models growing up. So I've always wanted myself to be that role model. So I just try to keep it clean as possible, and I've always been that person where even as a kid, I always want to do everything different from everyone else. So if everyone is swearing, I try to be that guy that makes not swearing cool again. I try. If everybody was not swearing, I'd probably be swearing. So that's just the way I work. So I don't know.
The Will Smith of what?
Yeah, a lot of podcasts I listen to, just kind of like Nolan, the wrestling podcast, Gary Vee, Chris Jericho.
He has a podcast?
Oh, that's great.
Chris Jericho's good.
Yeah, Chris Jericho. I love his podcast. I gotta listen to Bobby Lee because I've been seeing on Joe Coy's feed. Bobby Lee has been interviewing a lot of people. It looks really funny.
He swears a lot though.
He swears a lot. Yeah. And that's the thing. I can listen to it because I grew up in the 80s where, you had Raw and Delirious, Eddie Murphy. And so I can take it in. It's just, yeah, if it gets too
He doesn't
much.
like when females swear.
Yeah.
Females swear on their podcast, he's so turned on. But I'm like, but when a male swears, it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
See?
Come on.
Oh, this is gonna go over really well with the female demographic.
Hashtag me too. Hashtag.
My body, my choice.
We're not afraid of anything on the show. What was your hardest interview you've had, Nolan, as far as like maybe you were nervous, or maybe you don't get nervous, or maybe you didn't feel like you were well prepared, or it was a big high profile client? Is there anyone? We don't have to mention names.
No, that's fine. It's funny because Queena's like, oh, when are you getting the hard-hitting questions? And then boom, right off the
Get it up
bat.
in there. Yeah.
So for me, there's two parts that make it difficult. One, either the guest is difficult to interview, or the other side is me, whether like there's been times when I've been not feeling well or tired or not focused or whatever it is, and that will lend to a difficult interview. But the most difficult one, hands down, and we joke about it, is a guest of ours who seemed to be under the influence of
Some kind of narcotics or something.
a substance that might not quite be legal, and even if that weren't the case, if they weren't under the influence, they're also just a strange, quirky kind of personality to begin with, which is why I thought it would be interesting, because I thought, oh, this will lend to fun conversations. What I didn't expect was that they would just go on these like long, disjointed, unconnected rants, and I was also extremely tired too.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the energy to be like, let's get creative and try to figure a way
Did
out
it
of
turn
this.
into a long interview?
It turned into a
Yeah.
very long
Okay.
interview.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if, as far as the length of it was any longer than normal episodes, but it just felt like I was very nervous that I was going to fall asleep. Like, as I'm talking,
wow.
like my eyes started to cross.
I've
'Cause
done that with
I
past
couldn't-
girlfriends, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't stay connected to the conversation because it never made any sense.
And yours is in person too.
Yeah.
Oh my god. At
And-
least with mine, I have to be like,
And I was trying, I would try to like move the conversation to where we could end it, you know, where you have those transitional things like, well, I'm really glad that we had this time to hang out together so that they can know like, okay, yeah, no, thanks for having me. But he's like, no, let's keep going. I got so much more to say. I was like, oh.
was this Charlie Sheen?
It's a very similar kind
I think he was on Gavin's podcast.
Oh,
Yeah. He likes to tell stories.
yeah. Maybe he's more a little bit too.
Wow.
Yeah, but I remember as this going on, going, like, do I even release this episode? And I felt worried about, for the sake of my listeners, like, would they be upset with me? Because they trust me now in that.
Yeah. You gained that trust.
Yeah, like, oh, this is a person that he wants us to hear their story. I'll listen to it. And for me to knowingly be like, I don't know if this is going to be interesting at all, because I'm totally, like, embarrassed by it. But it's funny because I decided to air it anyway. And I have a few people who will give me honest feedback, and I check with them, and they're like, and one of them was like, yeah, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary where I was like, oh, this is terrible. I just was like, I'm not that interested, I'm not going to continue. And the other person was like, I thought it was okay. Like, it didn't seem weird to me. I mean, it did seem like he lost focus and stuff, but I didn't think he was on drugs or he or she was on drugs. But yeah, so I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's just that I'm very sensitive to it, you know, and I have a standard of like, you know, I want to be authentic too, right? So if I know that it's not the best episode, do I feel comfortable airing it? But I did think that there was things that could be learned from it. Yeah, so I'm like, oh, let's put it out there. It turned out okay.
Gavin, what was your toughest interview?
I always go back to one. It's, if you guys look at maybe the fourth episode. You know, it's funny. A lot of people actually really like that episode, but it was tough for me because I was on an off day. Like, it was in the morning, and usually I'm an early person. I'm an early bird, so I wake up at like 5:30, you know, work out and stuff like that. But that day I was just not feeling it, and I had a hard time asking questions. And usually I don't list questions. This is why my format's kind of changed as of after that episode, because I didn't have any questions ready, and this is a friend of mine, and I know them for like years, but I just, for some reason, I just couldn't think of stuff. But people really liked that episode, and it was actually a shorter episode because I couldn't think of anything. And yeah, it was difficult for me. Just getting going.
Yeah.
You know. But then now, you know, I look at that episode, I'm like, that was a good learning process for me, because I needed to find a way to kind of format it and then understand, like, you know, how to generate better questions, generate better topics, and just kind of lead the podcast in a way that the guest wants to, you know, how they want to be represented, and other things as well.
And you think open-ended questions that kind of helps out too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That keeps the conversation going.
Yeah, open-ended questions. I do a lot of tough questions, honestly.
Yeah.
I do, because a lot of the times now I actually meet people in person before I even schedule a podcast. And then just to understand their story, understand like ins and outs, and they tell me a bunch of stuff, which is surprising. I'm kind of like, wow, this is the first time we're meeting,
Yeah.
and you're telling me all this
opening up,
stuff.
yeah.
It's like very authentic, but then it's great for me because then I can really kind of ask the right questions for them, and then know like, okay, this is what they want to talk about. This is what I think audiences will love to hear, and this is what they would love to answer.
Queena, what was your toughest interview? You don't have to name any names.
Leanne Wong.
I have competed on Iron Chef America. I've been a guest judge on Chopped, Rachel Ray versus Guy.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's your
because
toughest. Local celebrity.
Yeah, exactly. And
Shout
I
out to
actually
Leanne.
didn't expect. I slid into her DMs and she answered me right away.
That's how you do it now.
Then I got really nervous and I interviewed her and she started talking about how she's been on Bravo and this and that. You know, like. Yeah, so this is just me in my closet interviewing you. And I remember I was so nervous the entire time. And then once I ended it, I was like, oh my god, it's so stupid.
By the way, Queena does her podcast out of her closet. In
I
case you
actually
guys don't
moved
know.
into
Yeah,
my
in case
little
you guys thinking that
dining
she
room
came out of the
/
closet or
office area.
anything, she actually interviews out of her closet audio-wise.
And
Because it is a local celebrity.
yeah, well,
not
she's
even local,
national-
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Top chef and all that. But I am now I've gotten better.
Do you guys feel like it's easier or harder to interview someone in person versus audio-wise, on the phone or whatever you use?
I feel like I got to the point where I'm able to make people feel comfortable when I talk to them. So for me, it's regardless. Before, I would have definitely said audio.
For me, it has to be in person. There's a real connection, getting the eye contact, and just feeling the energy. And I think the way our podcast works is just people always end up seeing how comfortable they felt and forgetting that we're even recording a podcast. Whereas when you're doing it through Skype or on the phone, you know you're constantly being reminded because you're talking into a device or looking into a computer. So I've only done, I think, 1 or 2 episodes through like Skype or something, and that first half hour was difficult. Like it wasn't coming together like how it normally would, but it eventually got there. But I just remember going, I don't think I want to do these virtual podcasts anymore because it just doesn't have that human connection anymore, which I think is the soul of our show format. So yeah, and I just know that being able to look someone in the eye, that's where we can go, oh, okay.
For me, I agree with Nolan. I like to do mine in person, and I've never done any of them like through Skype or some kind of audio device. But I feel like it's better to do it in person because maybe they want to see an answer, but you can't see it. You can't see it through a phone, right? You can't see if they want to explain an answer through a phone. So, but at least in person, you got that connection, like Nolan was saying. You look them in the eye, and then you can actually see like, okay, they want to say something, so time to back off a little bit, right? And then like in Skype, there's like a little lag sometimes. If you have that connection,
Yeah.
That's true.
there's a lag, and then you maybe they want to answer, but then you're talking over them a little bit, and it's like that's not good in retrospect,
And I think body language wise, yeah, you can look in someone's eyes, you can tell if they're about to say something, or
Right.
if you're just talking too much and they're like, oh my god, they're trying to fall
Falling
asleep.
asleep.
Right? And you can't hear that in the audio. For me, my toughest guess was probably a local comedian. Her name is Jelaine Shelton, and she's a social media influencer. She has like thousands of followers, but comedians, they're just of another level because their timing and everything, they're so confident and they're so sharp. And she kept like making me laugh, and I'm like, we're on a couch like interviewing, and I'm trying to be serious, and she's just like,
I did the coffee file a police report. It got mugged.
I'm like trying to keep it together, so we had to have a lot of outtakes for that episode, and we took probably like 3 hours at her house just trying to shoot it. And but the good news about video is you have a lot of bloopers and outtakes, so we have that to last us for months. We talked about your toughest guest, your toughest interview. What would be your one dream interview? as far as that one guest that you would want to interview one day on your podcast? Nolan, since you know a lot of really cool people, your show should probably turn into like talking with some really cool people, or Nolan talks to really cool people.
That's a cool name for a show.
Yeah, really, really cool people.
Well, if I'm gonna shoot for the stars, we're talking about dream guests. For me, it'd be Will Smith, because he was kind of like my idol growing up. Where I, as I mentioned, I watched a lot of TV, and that kind of was the one show that I felt like I could relate to that character. Not necessarily in the sense of like I'm this kid from Philadelphia who has a rich uncle, but someone who just has this like, I don't know, this burning desire to do what's right, but at the same time has this like, I really want to do this other stuff, and there's other people here telling you this is how it's done, this is the proper way, and you're like, but I don't associate with that. I don't feel comfortable with that, and that's how I felt growing up, because I was raised in a strict like Christian Chinese home. It's like, you're supposed to be a doctor, a lawyer, you're supposed to get straight A's, and I'm like, I don't like school, and I just want to go out and want to do these things that aren't necessarily looked at as popular. And even with, you know, the friends that I had, you know, I always didn't feel like I was like them. So, and I've seen him progress through his career as a person too, and as a performer. And I think at this point right now, I follow him on Instagram and Facebook, and he's hit this really cool point where he recognizes his value to not only his fans but just to the world, and that he wants to, and he said this, and I've adopted it myself, like he wants his life to be of value to others. And so whether that's through what he says or how he can inspire and stuff like that. And so I think just watching him in these interviews, it's like, he just looks so real and authentic at this point now. He's no longer like performing like, I'm Will Smith. It's this is me, I'm comfortable, and this is who I want to present. So I feel like it'd be a great interview, and there'd be so many questions I'd have for him. And I feel like I'd be like, this is my idol, so that would be the easiest interview for me. I'd be very nervous, but also extremely comfortable at the same time. Because I feel like I know him.
Because he's authentic.
Yeah. I would want that experience for them to be different from any other interview experience that they've had in the past. So like when I've had, you know, say like Nick Rolovich on, or Rob DeMello, or whatever, or King Shimabukuro, they've had the traditional, usual, you know, radio interviews and stuff, and it's like generic and things. My whole goal after that was for them to be like, that was really fun, that was really cool. I've never had that question asked to me, or what, and then for listeners to say, I didn't know that about them. That's so neat. I would have never guessed that this was something that they lived through. So I would really relish in that challenge for interviewing Will Smith and being like, because he's been interviewed by anyone and everyone. And I was like, I bet I could still find something where I could get that out of him. That'd be a cool challenge.
And I feel like if the interview is good, then you guys kind of build that relationship afterwards, because they don't mind doing projects with you after the interview is done.
Yeah.
If it's a bad interview, they don't want to see you ever again, right? If you're hard hitting or you ask awkward questions, of course you're going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about kind of like building relationships,
I think they want to be, if they trust you, in knowing what your intentions are. Because there's people who will interview you because they want something for themselves, and they don't care about the safety of you and your brand. Whereas I actually come from the angle of like, I really care about you as a person, and I appreciate you, and I just want to give you a chance to show yourself in the best light. So, and I hope that that's what comes across in my interaction with them, and I think that's why the eye contact makes a difference. So that they can feel like, even when I ask them questions that they are uncomfortable with, they know that I'm not trying to make them uncomfortable, and they can have the freedom and ability to say, I don't feel comfortable answering that, or they can answer that question in the way they want to, and I'm not gonna like, I know there's more to this. Like I can sense how they are reacting to that.
Dream guest, Gavin?
I would say either Bruno Mars or The Rock.
Oh, okay. You guys are going big. I feel like we gotta come back.
Dream.
Yeah,
it's a dream. I mean, we gotta dream big, right?
Yeah, that's big.
Jumping checkers.
Jeez.
I can get the rock.
Oh, I'm Japanese. I got Filipino too, so you know maybe he might relate a little bit. The Rock, I grew up watching wrestling. You know, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Undertaker is my favorite wrestler
Attitude Era.
of all time. Undertaker is my favorite wrestler. But The Rock, I feel like The Rock just kind of paved the way for wrestlers that wanted to go into like, you know, other things besides wrestling.
Yeah.
Because look at him now. He actually just got a generational war. He deserves it because, you know, he went from wrestling, he went into entertainment, and then now he's doing a bunch of entrepreneurship, you know, with different companies, and he would be a great guest to have on. And in Bruno Mars, you know, they're both local guys. I mean, The Rock maybe, you know, he went McKinley, so I'll say, he's local, you know, local enough. But Bruno Mars, you know, Bruno Mars, I remember watching his journey from when he was in high school and then where he is now. It's amazing how those guys broke the ceiling for people in Hawaii. So that would be great to have their take on how their careers kind of started and how growing up in Hawaii kind of influenced them to where they are today.
Wow, so Will Smith, Bruno Mars, The Rock, Queena, you got to come back with something big.
Zac Efron,
Zac Efron.
Chris Hemsworth.
In that podcast, she wouldn't talk. She wouldn't talk.
She should be eating her banana.
That would be a video podcast. I don't really have a dream guest, but if I had an opportunity to interview someone that I kind of get inspiration from as far as podcasts, I'll be Will Smith's wife.
Will
She
Smith's
does the Red Table Talk.
Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah, and
That's an excellent show.
we're actually going to be doing our own version of that.
I thought you were going to say we're actually going to be meeting with her.
There she is right now.
Jada! 1 minute, Jada.
What I like about what she does is, my whole thing with my podcast is I want to empower women. And what she does is she asks those hard-hitting questions. She doesn't have people at the table talk just like, oh yeah, seems like you do this and that. She actually asks questions that take you out of your comfort zone. And my whole thing is, if you're going to empower someone, you got to take them out of your comfort zone as well as yourself. Yeah. And one of her episodes, she had Gabriel Union, and in that episode, they actually didn't like each other at all before. And then she invited Gabriel. She's like, hey, let's patch things up. Why don't you come on my show and we'll patch things up on the show. So it was uncomfortable for the both of them, but it was real because women are catty little people, and we can get hung up on like the littlest things, right? We can get, well, I don't know if it is, but we will get up like, oh, she wore that, I wore that too. How dare she? And
I don't think guys do that. We're
and
pretty
then,
good. Yeah.
And then you like hate them for whatever years because they wore the same outfit. Stuff like that happens, and it is what it is, and that's what I like about Jada Pinkett Smith. And I feel like her and I would have an episode where we can push each other and empower each other and others.
Make each other better.
Yes.
My dream guest, I make goals every year. I do about 4 or 5 goals, and I try to accomplish them by the end of the year. And one of my goals this year was to interview Gunnar Peterson. And Gunnar Peterson is he's a strength and conditioning coach for the Lakers. He trains the Kardashians, Sylvester Stallone, Chris Hemsworth. So he's nicknamed a celebrity trainer, but he doesn't like the name celebrity trainer. But I've been kind of building rapport with him, like on social media, kind of getting in there a little bit slowly.
Fangirling.
Yeah, kind of fangirling. When he replies back to my stories, I'm like, oh my God,
Here's
Gunnar.
a picture of my friend
Oh my
here.
God, Gunnar, how are you? And I get no reply back. But Gunnar Peterson is actually my dream guest. And he's inspired me in 13 years of being a trainer. That was probably like my fitness icon besides Jack LaLanne. So I'm gonna start, as this year winds down, I'm gonna actually approach him probably in a couple months or so and try to get him, of course not in person video wise, but I can get him audio wise. And I'm really sure that he's gonna do it. So what's cool is I'm gonna make this footage right now, and then we're gonna play it back later on when I finally interview him. You see how we did that? And that's gonna be like B-roll, and it's gonna be pretty cool to say, if I am able to do it, how we can play this back and say that we interviewed him. But I'm really looking forward to that. So crossing my fingers that he'll say yes. So I want to thank our guests for being here. Nolan, you guys can catch Nolan's podcast, Hanging Out with Nolan Pong. Nolan Hong. Gavin Sugai, Talk Story Podcast. Check him out. Talk Story Podcast. Thanks for being on, Gavin.
Thank you again.
And Queen Atahi, Mompreneur BFF. And I believe you hold the record right now for the most amount of appearances on the show. How does that feel?
No, this is fun. You're fun. You're a fun person.
Tell me something I don't know. Anyway, I appreciate you guys being on. We're gonna talk some story after this. And again, I'm referencing your podcast, and we've referenced it at least 10 times, so that's free plugs
Just
right
fun
there.
hanging
The
out.
Rock,
I'm just gonna hang out with them. Yeah.
Little Mars.
That's some new BFFs.
Yeah.
Will Smith.
We're all kind of preneurs in some way.
Thank you, Jada.
But thanks for joining us on episode 10 of the show, and we'll see you on episode 11. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.